In this module, we'll be covering basic employability skills and looking at something that is extremely important. And that comes to critical thinking and problem solving. Now, in construction, we're going to be working on things all the time where we need to be able to think through problems, think on our feet, sometimes quickly, to come up with solutions to solve problems. So in this section, we will be covering uh, the aspect of critical thinking and the barriers to solving problems, describe how to solve problems using critical thinking, and describe problems related to planning and scheduling. Some of the terms we're going to be covering is tardiness, arriving late for work. That is, everyone know what that is, and that should not happen, especially on a regular basis. Most unions, they show up late, they will end up um, letting you go or docking your hours and then letting you go. Um, Absenteeism is a consistent failure to show up to work on time, to show up at all. In other words, been absent all the time. So again, to be employed on a job, especially in construction, when everything is counted on time and making the profits based on how quick we can get a job done, to keep from having issues with um, customers being dissatisfied because of timeliness, we need to look at these things. So keys to problem solving. Number one is that critical thinking is something um, that is a skill that all technicians should have, all tradesmen. Not everyone have that. And critical thinking is like second level thinking. In other words, it's thinking about thinking. You're going deep into something. In other words, some people may have the come up with an ideal, but you actually thought through that ideal and really uh, determining if that ideal will work or will not work. In other words, come up with an ideal, then you try it. That's first level thinking. But thinking through that, other issues and situations that can occur if you did certain things, that is critical thinking and really going deep into something. And there's other levels you can go, but this is something like technicians will use all the time. Very good technicians, technologists, they are usually very good critical thinkers because they solve problems on a daily basis throughout the day. So, keys to problem solving: do not let personal feelings get in the way of fairly evaluating information. Um, in other words, remain objective. All this is saying is that um, somebody tell you something or something you have done last week and it seemed to be the same problem this week, you just go ahead and go through the motions and get it done without thinking through what is the symptom or what is the cause of the symptom. So in other words, we look at this and a very good person who is a technician who is a very good critical thinking or problem solver, they take the time to analyze, think through, use the tools that is needed to be able to solve the problem. Determine the cause and effect to get the results. Think about people who are sources of information as experts and people you trust for advice. Compare new information with what you already know. If it does not fit, question it and separate facts from fiction. Weigh the merits of each option and consider the consequences that can be justified. In other words, that we look at the things that we just don't take things at first face value, that we look past that. And that is how we become good critical thinkers. Being close minded, what it does, it prevents people from trusting new ideas. In other words, that we never done it before, so it probably can't be done, or I don't want to try it. Instead of really looking at being open-minded enough to try something that you haven't done before, looking for new options. Forget your personal feelings about someone when listening to their ideals. Um, Even a person who might not be the smartest person around can come up with a good idea sometime. And just being able to listen to it and then evaluate it. That's what a critical thinker would do. Sometimes the people just come up with an idea without, uh, for whatever reason, they come up with a very good process to do something, and that's something that nobody else ever came up with. So don't discount people, even though they may be wrong most of the time, doesn't mean they can be wrong all the time. Most people fear change, and that is true. Most people don't like to have things change. And because they don't like change, they will resist things. And they're not going to try anything new. So in other words, um, many times that trying to solve a problem, if it didn't work based on what they already know, they just figure out that it cannot be done. So remember that change is the only constant in life. Everything do change, even though we don't like change. So here's a little Venn chart that goes through the steps of change and how things should work. So teamwork is important in everything we do, especially in construction, because very uh, often we work with multiple people. Yes, you can be a one-man show and get most of the things done, but uh, even then, you need to know the process of how to get things done, thinking through problems. Um, so develop options and think uh, them through clearly before you take things. And sometimes you need to write it down, put it on paper. And if you put it on paper, many times, it if visually you can see the steps, and you can see if it makes logical sense to go that route or not. Okay. So implement the chosen solution and monitor the results. In other words, as you go through the steps, how is it coming out? Is it working correctly? Is it doing what you thought it was going to do? In other words, monitor, meaning that as you go through the process, is it leading to what you're trying to get to? Don't just do it and complete everything and it didn't work, and then you start all over with something new. Monitor as you go through. In other words, you're going to cut a straight line. You watch the line. You put a line down. You draw it down. You keep your guide on it, making sure that you're going through. You're just not just cutting a piece and expect it to come out straight. You are planning to make it straight by putting things in place. That's why you would change the plan if the results aren't satisfactory. So as you're going through something, if it's not working out, stop, figure out a better way. Again, when we're planning things, scheduling things, uh, one of the main things that you will do, and especially in construction, they will have software that you can be used to help organize jobs that will help keep you organized, to help you find a solution to the end. This here is maybe different types of jobs for this construction job. In other words, you might need electricians and plumbers and things. When do they come in? How many hours are they going to be there? How many people are you going to use for the different tasks that's on this job? And it could be spelled out, even broke down to the days they would show up. And that way, you know when to bring people in, when to hire people, when the job should be done, or their job, specific task would be done. You know when to let them go when it is over with. So especially when you're hiring from the union hall, you hire for a specific task, then you could send them right back. They don't have to be on payroll the whole time to save you money. And it's known and already they recognize that they're there for a certain task. Regardless of the many tools used to manage a project, unexpected problems will arise, and that is so true. It will, no matter what. And challenge even the best team, but being organized will keep it from getting out of control. And that's what we do. In other words, as we working on a job, we working together as a team to make things happen. Even the best group going to run into something that's unseen, unheard of, and haven't experienced. But with the knowledge and experience, you can work through it. Alrighty, all of these are various problem solving, except for which one of these? All of these barriers to problem solving, except what? The only one that's not a barrier is critical thinking. That is a solution. That is what we should do. Closed mindedness is a barrier. Personality conflicts is a barrier. General fears of change is a barrier. The only thing that's not a barrier is critical thinking. In other words, if somebody closed minded, if you're a critical thinker, you're going to figure out a way to work around that person to get them to open their mind up um, so they can see through to the end. So the answer is critical thinking. The final step of the problem solving process is blank. So, in other words, if there's a problem, what will you do? The final step. After everything you did, is it monitoring the process and the results? No, that's not you monitoring it. You're checking things out to make a change. Is it put the solution into effect? That's really the beginning of the process. Choose a solution. Um, that is during the beginning to get to that point. Evaluate the final results. In other words, that's really the final step in the process of problem solving. In other words, you're evaluating. Did it work? Will you repeat it? Would it continue? Or are you going to find something else to do because it didn't work? Evaluate the final result. Typically, problems will fall into one or more of four categories. All of these are one of those categories itself for what? Typically, problems will fall into one of or more of these categories. If there's a problem, a labor problem, that sounds right. Equipment problem, yeah. Materials problems, yeah, you can have that. Resources. Resources are things where you solve problems. So the answer would be resources. Typically, problems will fall into one of these categories. Labor problems, equipment problems. Any of those can hinder a job getting done. But the resources is what you use to get through problems. Mechanical breakdowns is an example of which problem category? Mechanical breakdowns. So usually mechanical breakdowns is the equipment. Equipment. Equipment can break down. Mechanical issues with equipment. Tools can break down. Actually, tools just break. Um, Either the tool work or it doesn't work. Can you sharpen tools to make it sharper to work better? Yeah, I guess you can. But it's not really a broke down. It's just a maintenance issue. Maintenance that you need to maintain your tools. Absenteeism is the example of which problem category? It's a labor issue. Labor.